Inventory management is an important part of any action RPG that involves looting and crafting, but more so important in Grim Dawn with the limited space you have to store your items and the lack of a search function. For your nearly 200 different components, well over 1,000 unique legendaries and epics, and any nice monster infrequent or rare items that you happen to pick up along your journey. In this video, I'm going to be going over how you can better manage your inventory to not end up with a big mess, while at the same time still being able to collect all of the cool items that you pick up. We're going to be starting off with the extreme basics of inventory management and tips for the vanilla game, and then move on to what mods are available to help you manage your inventory. Finishing with the be-all end-all of inventory management mods that will change the way you play Grim Dawn. If you are an experienced player and don't want to watch me talk about all the basic vanilla tips, I'll add a timestamp for you so you can skip to the juicy stuff. Let's start this off with the basics for just how much inventory space the game gives you. You start off the game with 96 squares of inventory space and unlock up to 5 extra inventory bags through doing quests with 64 squares each. That's 416 squares of space in your base inventory, which is enough to carry up to 69 of the big 6x2 items. The inventory space this game gives you is pretty generous when we compare it to other action RPGs such as Path of Exile and Diablo 3, which both give you 60 spaces of inventory each. I believe there are 2 reasons why Grim Dawn is so generous with its inventory space. The first reason is the sheer amount of quests and crafting items you'll be picking up, usually having to dedicate 1 or 2 whole inventory bags for them, and having to stop the action every once in a while to go through your crafting components and sell your items. The second reason is the limited stash space you're given compared to other action RPGs. Your account can use silver to purchase up to 6 stash tabs shared among all your characters with a total of 1,296 spaces, 216 each, and each character can also get their own 6 stash tabs with the same amount of space. This may sound like a lot of stash space, but when comparing it to other action RPGs, and taking into account just how many items there are that are worth picking up in Grim Dawn, you'll probably find yourself running short on space if you do want to collect all of the cool loot that you find. And to a lot of people, that's one of the big draws of action RPGs. In theory, you can create a bunch of mule characters to carry items in their stash and inventory, but that'll get really tedious to switch between characters, not even mentioning how much silver it would take for the stash tabs and how much time it would take to unlock all of the inventory bags. This is why inventory management is so important, so let's get into what you can do to make it less of a hassle and enjoy your Grim Dawn experience. The first and most important step to keeping a clean inventory is knowing what you should be picking up and what you should ignore. The biggest thing that'll help you identify what's worth picking up in this game is the in-game loot filter. The loot filter icon can be found to the left of your HP bar on the bottom UI. This feature lets you filter through loot depending on what the item is or what stats the item has. My advice is to have common and magic items unchecked, as they aren't really worth picking up unless you're just starting out. Uncheck the weapon types that you're not using unless you have an alt that you want to keep them for, and to check 1 or more of the main damage types that you're doing. The character tab is really up to you depending on your current gear situation and what you're looking for. Just remember that checking anything on this tab will make the items with those stats show even if they don't meet the requirements of your damage type that you've selected. Another thing you can do is look up a few affixes that will be useful to your character using a website I'll link in the description. There are a lot of affixes in this game, and I don't think anyone expects you to memorize all of them because that would be insane, but knowing like 1 or 2 or maybe 2 or 3 that would help with your build will probably help you with knowing what items are worth picking up and what items aren't. As for epics and legendaries, those are the items that you would be collecting in an ideal world, but it's hard to do with the limited space that you have. With the vanilla game's stash space, there's no way you'll be able to carry all of the epics and legendaries that you collect. The rule I follow with them is selling most epics unless they seem nearly perfect for another character or your character, and keeping every legendary I find, since most are pretty good or even necessary items for a lot of builds. The other thing that you'll be finding a lot of are components and general crafting materials. You're going to want to pick all of these up because they are used in crafting recipes and can stack infinitely, with components only taking up 1 space each, and most crafting materials taking up 2. There are 2 ways that I found you can tackle components and crafting materials, one being a quick short-term fix and helps all of your characters, the other being a great long-term solution but mostly collecting it on just 1 character. The first method to tackling inventory pileups is quite simple, and involves just collecting all of the materials in your inventory over a course of time, and depositing them all into your stash by spamming shift-click every once in a while. The pros of this method is that you don't really have to pay attention to your inventory at all, and that stashing all of your materials will help your other characters since they can pop in the shared stash to take whatever they need, and crafting recipes can use materials from the shared stash. The cons of this method is that you will have a messy inventory after a little bit of gameplay with all your components taking up most of the space, and that you have to go back to town to clean up your inventory by stashing much more often than the other method. The second method to handling crafting materials is to have one of your inventory bags dedicated to materials looking a bit like this, with at least one of each crafting material and one of each of the common completed component drops. With this setup, every time you pick up a crafting material or complete a component, it will automatically go into this inventory bag and you won't have to worry about it piling up in your main inventory since they will all stack infinitely. You can even dedicate more space to picking up the rarer components if you find that you're getting a lot of those. The pros of this method is that you won't have to go back to stash your loot more often, and that you'll have more space in your base inventory to pick up other loot. The cons of this method is the initial setup this takes, and the fact that all of your components will pile up on one character instead of being in a shared stash for all characters to use. So that basically does it for vanilla inventory management tips. At the end of the day, there's not really much you can do to keep a clean inventory and still be able to collect items in the base game, but that is where mods come in. There are two mods that I've already made a video on that can help with the looting, which are Grim Internals, which gives you an option to auto-loot components and crafting materials, and Full Rainbow, which changes the colors of loot on the ground based on their affixes, which can really help you figure out what you should be picking up. I'm not going to go in depth on these mods in this video, but I'll leave a link in the description for you to check them out. Another common mod to help manage your items is one of the many stash size increasing mods out there. I'll put a link of one of the most popular ones in the description that can really help you out. The installation is a very simple drag and drop. I personally don't use any stash expanding mods because of the mod I'm about to go over now. The biggest mod out there for inventory management right now that has completely changed the way I play the game and collect items is the Grim Dawn Item Assistant. There's a lot to unpack with this one, so let me start off with explaining what it is. It's more of a tool than a mod really, a separate program you install and have open to suck items out of your stash into a database of items with infinite space and an in-depth search function that lets you sort by level, damage type, resistance type, and much more. I understand that this isn't for everybody, since having to have a separate program and tool open to play a game can be pretty annoying, and that's why I include a stash expanding mod in this video as well to give you that option. I'd say the Item Assistant tool is totally worth it though. It has given me the ability to have a lot more fun with Grim Dawn. Before installing this mod, I was just selling almost every epic or good rare item that I pick up because I didn't want to run out of space, and I knew that even if I collected them and threw them in my stash, I wouldn't really be able to find them again later because there is no search bar in the game. Now with this mod, I actually get excited when cool items drop since I can put them in the stash and easily be able to find them again later. I've heard the argument that this tool can be seen as cheating by some people, but in my opinion, with Grim Dawn being a single player game with optional co-op, you can really do whatever you want with the game once you buy it, since really at the end of the day it's here to be enjoyed. Since this is really more of a separate program than a mod, the installation is quite different, but it's still pretty simple in the end. The installation just requires you to turn off the Steam cloud saving. So the first thing you should really do is create a backup of your save and move it into your local game files. The Item Assistant forum post includes a guide on how to do this, but basically you have to locate your Steam user data folder for Grim Dawn and find the file 219990 where your Grim Dawn save file is at. You're going to want to create a backup of this because you're going to be moving it over to the local save folder under your documents, My Games, Grim Dawn, and Save. Now you have to turn off the cloud saving in Steam by right-clicking the game in your library, hitting Properties, Updates, and unchecking Enable Steam Cloud Synchronization for Grim Dawn. Then, you have to go into your game and disable cloud saving in the General Options tab. Now, with cloud saving disabled, just move your character save data over to the local folder in your documents. Now all I have to do is install the Item Assistant and run it. It'll be set up with your save game. Once you're in game and have the Item Assistant open, any items that you put in your highest tier unlocked shared stash tab will be sucked into the database once you walk away from the stash. Okay, so I have the game open here with the Item Assistant also running in the background here, and I'll show you how you use it. It's pretty simple. It's actually pretty crazy how it works. I was really surprised at how simple it was. So we have all of these items in our inventory right here, and we want to keep these. So in the normal game, you would kind of just put them in your stash, let it hang out there, and you would come back to it later, right? And it'd just be in that stash forever. But with the new item assistant, what we do is go to the highest unlocked tier of shared stash tab, and you place your item in there. I just placed my Radagon Shroud in there. Then once you leave the stash, you have to leave the area to actually make it go through. They have that as like a safe check to make sure there's not like duplicating going on and everything like that. Then that's gone. It's not in here. So where did it go? I'll show you exactly where it went. It went into the item assistant. So every time an item comes in here, it goes through this item assistant, and this item assistant is, like I said, a infinite database of items that you can search through. Those are Radagon's. Yeah, Radagon Shroud we just put in here. You see it just got in here. It is not backed up to the cloud right now. I'll show you how you can do that though in a few seconds, which is a pretty important thing to do in the end. And if we want any of these items back, say, let's go back to the main menu here. Say I want this Brutes of Primordial Rage. I want this back. I want to be wearing this right now. So I just hit transfer to stash, and it just goes out of the database and into your second last highest. So now I have this. So now I have the Boots of Primordial Rage, and it's the exact item that I stashed in probably like a few days ago. I don't know when I put this in, but the great thing about this is that any item that you put in there at any point is going to get saved. You can back it up to the cloud to make sure you don't lose all of your items. And you see all of my items just went back in there, which is really, really awesome. And of course, there's a lot of ways you can search and sort these. You can order them by level. You can put level caps on items you want to be shown. You can show any yellow, green, blue, red, blah, blah. If you're making a new character and you say, you're like, oh, well, I'm going to do piercing damage, and also I'm running pretty low on Aether Resist. Look at that, I have 2 items that give pierce damage and Aether Resist right here. So super useful, not for everybody, but that's why I included the option of just the normal stash expander. There are a lot more options in this right here too, the biggest one being the online backup option. You can log in with an account through this tool to get automatic backups, and you can back up at any time, and that makes sure that you don't lose your items. So that Radagon's Shroud that I just put in that wasn't backed up, it says it isn't still, but I'm pretty sure it is. Maybe if I just restarted the program, it'll start saying that. There you go. So yeah, I just restarted the program, and now it's showing that it is saved to the cloud. It just takes a little while to update there, so that's a super useful thing. There's a bunch of different settings that you can turn off and on as well, which is pretty cool. Makes it a little bit easier. There's actually even a buddy system, which is pretty cool. It gives you like your own user ID, and you can kind of add your friends, and you can look at your friend stashes and stuff, and you can use that to like trade with people if you're playing with a friend or you're playing with your spouse or something like that. Has a log, has a whole help thing that lets you find questions for every little thing. Like, this is a super duper well made tool. I'm really, really, really surprised and really happy with all the work put into this by the tool creator. So yeah, this has made my life a lot easier. I understand that it's not for everybody, but I highly, highly, highly recommend it, at least to try it out. So it's going to be it for the video on inventory management here. If I missed something, or if there's any tips that you have, just let me know in the comments. I appreciate you watching. I hope this video was able to help you, and hopefully it's been able to make your Grim Dawn experience just a little bit better. So I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.